Needless to say, we could all use a reminder about how much sunscreen to use and why. Here's what the experts have to say about application, reapplication, and all of the variables that come into play, like SPF level, being indoors, and more. $10, $21. The amount of product you apply is extremely important, but so is the SPF number. And you'll be hard-pressed to find a dermatologist that will tell you anything under SPF 30 is sufficient enough, even with diligent application, to truly protect skin from discoloration, collagen breakdown, and skin cancer. A common inaccuracy that is still widely shared is that because SPF 30 filters 97%, SPF 50 blocks 98% of rays, and SPF 100 about 99%, there is little difference between them. This isn't right, Hirsch explains. If you put it a different way, by going from SPF 30 to SPF 50, you get 1.5 times the UV getting through the filter, so there, in addition to seeking out a high SPF number, make sure the sunscreen you select is indicated as broad spectrum. That means it protects against both UVB and UVA rays, the latter of which cannot be addressed by SPF alone. In a word, very. And for the most part, it should be happening pretty frequently. Reapply every 2 hours at a minimum, but more often if sweating or immersed in water. Board-certified dermatologist Roberta Del Campo tells. But does that mean you have to strip down and reapply sunscreen all over your body every 2 hours? Not necessarily. Garshik says clothing may provide some degree of protection. A white cotton t-shirt, for example, offers a UPF of 5, so how long you'll be outside and the type of exposure would determine the need to reapply sunscreen underneath clothing. If you will be in direct sun exposure or spending a significant time outdoors or at the beach, it is best to wear UPF clothing to provide an extra degree of protection, she says. However, since certain body parts other than your face aren't covered by clothing, Garshik says those particular areas definitely need sunscreen reapplication. It is important to remember to reapply to the scalp, hands, neck, ears, lips, tops of feet, and areas that may be exposed that you may not realize, she says. And yes, reapplication is important indoors, too, especially if you spend any amount of time in a room with natural light. If it is light enough for you to see, that is sun, says Hirsch. If you are indoors all day and not near any direct sunlight, reapplying just doesn't have the same urgency. But if you sit, as many people do, at a desk facing a window with sunlight pouring in, you should really think about that, because UVA goes through glass. And remember, you're not just protecting yourself against UVA rays when you're indoors. While the majority of blue light exposure is from the sun, our digital devices emit high-energy visible light, and some sunscreens may offer protection against this, Garshik says. The best way to ensure you're applying enough sunscreen every day is to simply force yourself into the habit, like you have with your moisturizer. Applying an SPF moisturizer daily makes it a habit that pays off in the long run. If you only do it occasionally, then it's not going to be consistent, says Shirazi, who personally loves using tinted moisturizer to serve multiple purposes. But nowadays, sunscreen doesn't even have to be called a moisturizer in order to serve as one, she says, because daily sunscreen formulas have become more moisturizing, so there's no need to apply a moisturizer beforehand. If you're reluctant to really slather on a lot of sunscreen, at the very least, choose a sunscreen with a higher SPF number. The increased level of protection compensates, to an extent, for under-application, says Hirsch. However, this does not negate the need to reapply after 2 hours for sweating or swimming or being outdoors, which is one issue with the super high SPFs. People tend to think they are one and done for application, which is not correct. $37, $36, and finally, Garshik says, don't forget that sunscreen is the most essential piece of the sun protection puzzle, but not the only one. It is also important to remember other sun protective strategies, she says, including seeking shade, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and sun protective clothing, and avoiding peak hours of UV exposure. For those with dark skin tones, finding a deodorant that doesn't leave white streaks behind can be a struggle. Luckily, Nubian Heritage's African Black Soap 24-hour deodorant doesn't leave marks after application. This deodorant is so clean-smelling, glides onto your pits easily, and leaves you feeling fresh for most of the day, she says.